In our previous episode, UNL Extension forage specialist Bruce Anderson explained what to look for when reading a forage analysis. This week, Bruce joins us again to discuss why you need to be aware of nitrate dangers in forages before feeding them to livestock. We've talked about those dangers in drought-stressed corn both this year and last year, but Bruce says during this time period, it's also crucial to know what's in your stored forages.
Well, this is really the time, Jeff, when we're typically going to be feeding most of those hays that may have risky levels of nitrates in them. We're taking that oat hay, or we're taking that CRP hay, or we're taking some that cane hay or millet hay that we grew in this past summertime, and now we're into the winter where we need to start feeding that hay to the animals, and we need to make sure that we've kept track of what we've been harvesting. Hopefully we've done some testing of the most risky hays that we have out there and know what the nitrate levels are in them, and then can keep track of that as we're feeding it to the animals.
One of your concerns is if there would be a snowstorm and things get covered up, that's what you're going to feed right away.
That's right. Oftentimes our biggest risk period is when the animals have not been eating for a while, and that's typically after a snowstorm. They may go a day or two with very little to eat, and then in our rush to get some hay out to them, once we get that opportunity to do so, we may kind of thoughtlessly or in our rush grab onto any bale or stack that we have handy and take that out to the animals. We need to be really careful at that time that the hay that we present to them when they're virtually empty and really hungry is going to be a safe hay to feed to them, because otherwise they may take a huge meal right away of that high nitrate hay, and we've had situations where that's occurred and the animals start walking over to get a drink of water and they just fall over dead because of that sudden flush of nitrates going into their system.
If you're to take a nitrate test, you send it in, you're going to get it back, and what are you going to see for numbers and how do you use them?
Well, that's one place where some folks end up with some confusion, because the different labs that report on nitrates and will do these analyses, they typically report the nitrates in one of two different ways. And so the number that we get back and the interpretation that we give on it really needs to have associated with it our knowledge of how it's being reported. Those two ways that it's being reported are either as nitrate, just like we're always talking about it, or in a form that they call nitrate nitrogen. And the difference in the values of those numbers is more than fourfold. And so when we're looking at nitrates per se, typically here at the University of Nebraska, somewhere around 9,000 to 10,000 parts per million is the level where we think that we're at a potentially lethal level. And we see those kinds of numbers, we know that we need to be careful if we're going to be feeding that type of hay. If we're worried a little bit about giving it to pregnant animals at that time and want to minimize abortion, we tend to cut those numbers in half to around 5,000 as to the maximum level we'd want to give to the animals, especially if they haven't been accustomed to eating higher nitrate feeds. If we're talking about the other form, the nitrate nitrogen, the potentially lethal level is only around 2,100. A fourth of what that other one is. And so when we see a number, and particularly when someone gets something back that says it's 5,000, okay, is that as nitrate nitrogen, which would mean it's double the potentially lethal level, or is it as nitrate, which is half the potentially lethal level? So knowing what form we're getting it reported in, and then looking at the values that we have, we can do a good interpretation of how risky that hay is, and then what kind of management is needed to use that hay real safely.
Quick question, if you had taken a nitrogen or a nitrate test at the beginning of the season, maybe after harvest or something like that, do you expect those levels to change? Should I expect that I'm going to have to test again, or that those levels would change much?
The nitrates in hay stay pretty stable, so we don't see a weathering loss or any kind of other losses occur at the nitrates. So if you took something earlier, it's probably going to be pretty close to that yet at this time.